Hello, I'm Matt Kelly.
And I'm Matt Dancona.
And this is the Two Matts for Friday the 29th of November.
Oh, you can hear those jingle bells.
It really is
getting
coming
close,
on, isn't it?
Oh,
we should kick off by saying thank you. Yeah, to everyone who came to the Phoenix.
It was great fun.
On Monday night. We had such a great time.
It was wonderful. And the best thing was just meeting listeners to the pod, readers of the New European, chatting to them. It was wonderful.
I mean, people had come from far and wide. And we got a lovely email this morning from a lady up in Hull.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, I felt almost embarrassed that she'd come from all the way down from Hull just to listen to us chat crap on stage like that.
Well, we're clearly going to have to go to Hull.
We will have to return the favour.
Definitely.
But there were people from all over, and it was, I mean, look, it was the first time we'd ever done a live event, and it went better than I had feared it might.
Yeah,
I hope it'll get better next time. But it was great.
It was, the top line was it was very enjoyable, and also it was enjoyable at a time when there's lots of things to be depressed about.
Yeah, to
see people who are open to the message that there are better ways ahead, better, and have fun, in doing so. It was great.
We did. We had a great laugh. So thank you
all for coming.
And
there will be more.
There will definitely be more. And if you've got suggestions about where we should go to, then we're all ears. Because obviously we don't want to just keep it to London. We'd like to travel. Not. So fire in your suggestions. Anyway, today's business.
Big story today.
Yeah, I mean, slightly out of the blue. I know the figures were flagged up as coming, but it's taken over the agenda, which is the migration, the net migration
dominated
figures.
The news. So the news is just sort of facts the case. Net migration. This is according to the Office for National Statistics. So this is proper, impartial information, not political. Net migration hit a record high of nearly 1 million last year. 100, and the point is that's been upgraded by 170,000. Actually, it was 906,000 year ending June 2023, and that's upgraded from 740,000. Now the net migration figure at the moment for the year ending June 2024 is down by 20% to 728,000. So everyone is putting their own analysis upon this. Suella Braverman's saying that the downward trend shows that her policies are working. I mean,
cleverly jumped out as well, didn't he?
Yes, that's right.
It's all me. It's all me.
Farage has said it's a disaster, and I suppose my start. I mean, I'd be interested to hear what your starting point is. My starting point in all of this is that whatever we do, we mustn't do Farage's work for him, because the scale of the figure is so great that it's very easy, and this is now happening. We're recording this on Thursday, and just looking around and listening, people are sort of framing this as the statistical equivalent of Farage's vile 2016 Brexit campaign breaking point poster.
Yes.
The implication being that we've somehow crossed a line here. Something must be done. Rivers of blood. That kind of insinuation, and the particular aspect of it that I've been finding distasteful is that there's a lot of dog whistly emphasis upon the fact that the non-EU nationals account for 86% of the 1.2 million. Remember, it's a net figure, so the number of people that enter is higher than the net figure, who entered the country in the year to June 2024. And what you have there, and it's not spelt out, but it's there, you can hear it, is the sort of none too subtle insinuation that German and French immigrants would be preferable to Indian or Jamaican immigrants. And I think that if you come from the position we do, just when you're not us, but when you're kind of apprehending how this is being treated in the public square, one has to be very, very vigilant about that.
Yeah, I mean, the difficult thing for me is, and I put out on our kind of editorial group WhatsApp chat.
Yes.
Has anyone seen a great article about a truly progressive answer to these enormous figures? And the answer is no, because there isn't one.
No.
And it doesn't exist. And the reason it doesn't exist is that any rational person looking at the state of this nation right now, with its hopeless infrastructure, its lack of housing, its NHS and social care in crisis, all of the things that have bedeviled our progress for, predating Brexit, anybody would look at it and say, well, having another 900,000 or 750,000 people coming in each year isn't helping. It isn't helping.
Well, hold on, because I agree with all that, and we can talk.
Well, this is the argument that we need to get into. Yeah.
Yes, if you look at it just in terms of numbers, but hang on a minute. 92% of the figure is legal migration.
Yeah.
So we can talk about asylum seekers, smashing the gangs, stopping the boats, all that, if we like. But the vast majority of the people in this are people who come on student visas, and now it's much harder for them to bring dependents.
Yeah.
And workers, right? So the students, basically, without those students, the higher education system would collapse.
Yeah.
Okay? So that may not be the main thing, but it's one.
Yeah.
The workers, massive. Because, first thing to point out, which is almost never acknowledged in the debate, is they pay taxes.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And they keep the service economy going, delivery, hospitality sectors, and not to speak of the skilled sectors that many of them enter. And so Nigel Farage did a press conference today, Thursday, partly to celebrate, if that's the word, the defection of Andrew Jenkins from the Conservative Party to the Reform UK, which I would say was a Conservative gain. And Farage said, amongst many, you can imagine this was catnip to Farage, and he said that the figures are, quote, horrendous for people who want a GP appointment. Well, hang on a minute. What if that GP is an immigrant?
Right.
Is it still horrendous?
Yeah.
I mean, you take my point.
I do. And just for clarity, I think we're in danger of violently agreeing in a minute, because what I was going to say is there's two sides to it.
Of course.
One is the economy and growth, and all of that. To keep inflating the bubble of the economy, you need more people in it, right?
Yes.
But the point I'm trying to make is that why it's such an easy argument for non-progressives, again, this bloody unholy word.
Well, I don't think there's a better one. We'll have to be used.
But why it's such an open goal is that they can point to. Let me explain a little bit. There was a woman on the LBC radio as I was driving in from, I think the organisation was called Freedom from Torture, right? So obviously a very worthwhile, noble cause. But I have to say, when the interviewer was tackling her about the scale of these numbers, her argument struck me as the worst kind of argument you can make, because it just sounded so flimsy and pathetic. It was all about, but people hide behind these numbers, but you've got to look at the stories of the real people who are coming in, people who are fleeing persecution.
Right.
And I was just thinking, yeah, of course, but...
Well, actually, that's not the main group of people.
That's right. So one thing, that's a much smaller group of people. But secondly, that is exactly the kind of message that people like Nigel Farage are delighted to hear, because they know that when you put in front of a potential voter, do you want to save somebody from oppression overseas, or do you want your kids to be able to afford a house? There's only one winner in that argument.
So I've got lots of thoughts about this, not in any particular order, but one of them is how many of the people who see these figures today through whatever medium they, whether it's a call-in program or online or whatever, and think this is an outrage, Enoch was right?
Yeah.
Well, then this evening order an Uber or a Deliveroo.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
The hypocrisy in this is huge, and I think this is where I think we might be heading in terms of the conversation, is that that hypocrisy needs to be called out.
Yeah.
And it isn't being called out. So at the moment, the right, particularly the Reform UK right, the Farage right, says it wants net zero on immigration. It's not so keen on net zero in carbon emissions, right? But actually, the consequences of that would be catastrophic for the UK economy.
Would kill it.
So, I think we can say with some honesty that we have been calling for a reset on migration policy for a long time.
Yeah.
And the first thing that needs to be said is that, and ministers are not doing this today, they're not, is that there needs to be a defence of migration, which is to say, look, the UK economy is structured so that it depends to a huge extent upon migrant labour, some of it permanent, most of it temporary.
Yeah.
And, is what you as voters, as it were, by implication, have to decide. Do you want a fairly, porous border to that extent on the legal front, or do you want much less of that, but higher prices all round?
Yeah.
You've got to decide, right? Yeah. Because at the moment, we I know inflation has been high, but in terms of of goods and deliveries and services, we've been through a period where things are very cheap by comparison to what they would be, and there are a lot of jobs which, if you like, indigenous Brits won't fill, right? So, what's the solution to that? Are we really going for a kind of protectionist, borders up? Some people would say, yeah, we do need to raise wages, and that's a legitimate argument. But I think it needs to be had on those terms rather than just we can't have any more. We can't go on like this.
And this is the weakness that we find ourselves saddled with, is a government who aren't making that case, aren't telling that story. Everybody seems a little bit dazzled by the size of the number. It's like, my God, it's reminiscent of, remember when Germany let everybody in? They let 1 million people in. Well, that's the scale. Every year, that's the same scale. And it's so easy for the right wing, the hard right, to say, look, there's the problem, and they don't have to offer a solution. They can just identify the problem, and it's enough to stir people's emotions, because nobody is standing up and saying, clearly, without these people, everything falls down.
Yeah, now you're right, and you said earlier that there are, obviously, when you have that number of people coming in net every year, there are consequences for infrastructure.
Yeah.
Now that, as I said, they're offset by tax that's raised from the people who come into work. But, this is a massive test of what Labour has promised on planning, making planning much easier, getting rid of all the red tape and the NIMBYism, and building houses. And there's talk, and honestly, more than 30 years doing this, the number of skills revolutions I've heard promised.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. I mean, I'd love it to be so. The idea that we're going to train a generation of existing British citizens to fill all these jobs. All right, if you say so, but I'll believe it when I see it.
I think that what's crucial to me is that there is a concerted effort to get into the public domain the opposite of that breaking point poster. Right.
100%.
With the same vigor and the same communication cut through.
Yes.
The opposite of Nigel Farage stood in front of that picture.
Yeah. Now, I mean, there are complexities and nuances to this. I mean, one of the things is that there are errors on the left of centre, and I think that one of them has been a complete weak will refusal to confront the issue of integration. So 8 years ago, Louise Casey delivered a really, really intelligent and, not illiberal report on integration. Came into Theresa May's office, and I remember talking to someone close to Theresa May at the time who said, none of this is going to happen.
Why?
Because it involved things like really actively encouraging people to learn English.
Right.
And not always, as it were, putting diversity first, which is not to say excluding people, but actually encouraging people to believe that you can carry on with whatever you want. You're a free citizen. It's good. Bring the culture of the country you've come from with you and carry it on through the generations.
Yeah.
But you can't exist in cantons. Right. Yeah. And I think one of the things that has helped Farage, and I'm sure there'll be people listening who will not approve of me saying this, but has been the toleration of, if you like, cantonization, balkanization of society, that we've turned a blind eye to bits of the country becoming almost sort of groups unto themselves.
Yeah, ghettos,
because it's too difficult to have the conversations that are necessary to say, hang on a minute, it's not okay, for example, this is a micro example, that for 3 years a teacher in Batley has been in hiding because the local council and his union were not ready to stand up to the Islamist theocrats who objected to him showing an image of the Prophet Muhammad in a religious studies class. Now, at the time, everyone really just wanted it. That's my point. Everyone wanted it just to go away.
Yeah,
they wanted it to go away, and
because it opens a can of worms, doesn't it?
Yeah, but you see,
dealing with.
Okay, that's the point.
Yeah,
I think can of worms aren't always bad.
No, quite
right. It's like if progressives or whatever you want to say are serious about winning this and defending pluralism and defending multi-ethnicity and defending multi-faith and multicultural society, we have got to be more robust on this. You can't always split the difference or run away from difficult conversations. And I'm afraid liberals do.
And the weird thing for me, or the irony, is that Britain has got actually a very successful history with some serious anomalies over time, but a good history of assimilation and integration and not ghettoizing people.
Yeah.
If you look at any of our major cities, especially London, you will see, pockets of communities in areas, but the levels of integration are high. People go and enjoy the restaurant. So take fascinating for me yesterday, driving down to do my shopping down on Green Lanes in Haringey. Right, there's a Sainsbury's down there, and as I come, about 12 Black Mariahs full of coppers come streaming past me and pull out into the car park, and then literally squads of coppers running in formation like Roman platoons, down the road to confront, obviously I followed to see what's going on, to confront a huge protest outside a Kurdish community centre, which had been raided by the police under instruction from the Home Office because of an accusation that they're involved with the PKK.
Right.
So huge, big demonstration. And I thought this symbolises the London I know very well and love very well. And it symbolises the London I don't know until I see it, which is because we go to Green Lanes all the time for lovely Turkish meals or to...
but you see, that
So there's the upside.
But that's not... This is where the right, they're not right, but they have us sometimes, which is... The world we know in London is not England, Britain. It isn't.
Yeah.
And, Corbyn's disastrous result in 2019 was partly because a lot of traditional Labour voters felt that he'd completely lost sight of an idea of patriotism. Now, the key for me is how do you stop that, defend that idea of patriotism, but integrate it with an internationalist perspective and not let it become nationalism.
Yeah.
And I think it's not really controversial that in the last 4 years or so, there's been a kind of sense of, oh, you better not talk about that. Or, certain issues, or for example, over grooming gangs, actually most grooming gangs are white, as a matter of fact, right? But it's a matter of record that authorities dragged their heels over grooming gangs that were Pakistani, and that was disastrous for community relations. And I think that I'm putting undue emphasis on this because I don't actually think it's the main point, but I do think that be honest about the merits of immigration, but also about the merits of integrating as a UK citizen, and explaining that does not mean you have to leave behind your identity from the country you've come from, but it does mean more than obeying the law and paying taxes.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And I don't think it's just, maybe there's a split between metropolitan areas and less city,
possibly
small. Because I'm thinking Liverpool is as integrated as you could wish for these days.
But Matt, we can't ignore the phenomenal rise of reform. I mean, it was, you know,
no, it's 20% now.
You know, I mean, there are people out there who really are buying what he's selling.
Yes, but this is the very point I'm trying to make. Like, it's this perception versus reality argument.
Yeah, but
I totally acknowledge, for a lot of people, the reality is that they're not comfortable with the way that Britain has changed in the last 20 years. But a lot of that discomfort, I would imagine, is through the kind of actual concrete changes to their lives, not the community per se, but the fact that it's harder to get a GP appointment. The fact that
and it's, of course, it's wrong but easy to blame that upon immigration.
Precisely. So that is a systematic failure of government over the last 25 years.
But do you see my point?
Since Blair opening the...
So at one end, you've got massive immigration carrying on.
Yeah.
At the other end, you've got complete silence about how this is to be managed.
I completely buy into that. Yeah.
And management, it is management. I mean, you know, any country, you know, however, any country in the free world expects a certain kind of minimum level of conformity from people who, you know, countries aren't dormitories. Yeah. You know, they are, and nor are they sort of blood and soil communities either. But they do. It does involve difficult conversations about that. Now, you know, I don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that everyone should change their dress code or ditch their religion. Far from it. You know, I mean, one of the best things about this country, I don't believe in God, but I would, you know, go to the barricades to defend freedom of worship. I think it's a fantastic thing that we have mosques and synagogues, and you know, this is great. And of course, the problem in all of this is the thing that you started off by saying is that personally, I don't see any problem at all, right? And personally, and this is really letting the cat out of the bag, I don't really see any problem with the immigration figure. You know, I am not. When I see that 900,000 people net came to the UK last year, I don't go, oh my God, it's the end of the world. Yeah. But I'm powerfully conscious that is a very, very London-centric, liberal, as you say, we live in metropolitan places, and as you say, you know, you grew up in Liverpool. That's another one. That's another very tolerant metropolitan place. Yeah. But everywhere else, or not everywhere else, but a lot of places, there are people who disagree. And Starmer and co have to have a narrative which is not just we're going to get the numbers down, which is what they've said today.
The other thing that I'd like to see is, and tie this into the indigenous decline in birth rate.
Yes.
Now, maybe not right now, because the birth rate hasn't, to my knowledge, we'll have to check it up, but my knowledge, it isn't actually in decline right now. But the forecasts are that very soon we will be in a declining birth rate, which has all sorts of consequences for... So if you look at the population of the UK, not just net immigration or emigration and migration, but you look at the actual absolute population of the UK, if reform got their wish and there was zero immigration, very quickly we would be declining in numbers.
Yeah.
Because we're not producing enough babies. And if you cast that forward a generation, we are in all sorts of shit.
Yes, and of course the far right version of this is Great Replacement theory and biological destiny. You know, you literally have J.D. Vance prancing around saying, "Come on, American women, have babies," which is scary Handmaid's Tale stuff. And again, this requires an intelligent, decent left of centre answer to it, which is to be aware. And I think that a lot of this has to do with I was thinking as I was listening to some of the churn on media on the way in, that it's incredibly hard in the 2-minute clip for anyone to say any of this.
Yeah.
Whereas it's really easy for Nigel Farage to say, far too many, bring it down, otherwise the country's going to go to the dogs.
Well, I listened to 2 minutes of I mean, very cleverly produced press conference.
Right.
They are smart because
they know how to do it.
Well, they think in tabloid terms, you know, because they think, you know, we've got 100,000 members now, and we'd like to present the 100,000th member. It's Andrea Jenkins.
Andrea Jenkins.
Very clever, very slick, good movement. Abhorrent messages. Within his 2-minute clip was, if you're wondering why it's so hard to get a GP appointment, if you're wondering if your kids will ever get a house, if you're wondering why the schools are so packed out and the roads are so congested, here's your answer, right? And this is what my opening remark with any rational person listening to that and just listening to that would go, yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? But it's not obvious at all.
It's not obvious at all, and you have to disaggregate it. But doing that takes 25 minutes rather than 2.
Right.
And it's hard. So what the challenge is to find pithy ways of saying it, which we're nowhere near having landed. Yeah. And I think, you know, at the moment, it's an entirely defensive operation, which is Labour ministers rushing in and saying, "Oh, well, we get it. You know, we're going to bring it down."
Yeah.
Another thing to take stock of is that I think Thursday was very important because it will do exactly what Farage and co have wanted for a long time, and some senior people in the Conservative Party too, which is to shift the focus away, not totally, but ensure that there's as much focus on legal migration as there is on illegal migration. Because for a long time, and thanks partly due to the sort of insane obsession of Johnson and Truss and Sunak upon Rwanda and the Bibi Stockholm and so on, and stopping the boats, that's been where the focus is. But really, the battle all along for the hard right has been legal migration, and that this is the inflection point.
That's right.
And it requires a big... I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think presently advised and presently informed, I don't think Starmer's up to it. So I think it's going to fall to groups outside the government to build up this way of thinking. Yeah. And it's hard yards.
Yeah. The other astonishing thing, just to wrap up this section of the podcast, the astonishing cost of handling the asylum system.
Crazy.
£5 billion now. But we've still got 100,000 people waiting to be processed.
Invest in the courts.
Yeah.
And as we've said before, let them work with ID cards.
Yeah, 100%.
And the cost would plummet.
You've got a third of those 100,000. You've got 30 to 40,000 people have been there in the system for more than a year.
You imagine if you put £5 billion into the court system. I mean, just up front.
Yeah.
And hypothecated half of that to asylum hearings.
Yeah.
Done. It would be done.
And we can be very clear about who's to blame for that. And it's the Sunak and the Truss government and Suella Braverman, who's today crowing about these are my policies, wasting all that money and all that time with these nonsense schemes like Rwanda.
Crazy.
And I mean, absolutely criminal.
Hundreds of millions of quid of taxpayers' money.
Which did nothing.
Not to speak, I mean, you know, ethically indefensible, but also fiscally crazy.
Suella Braverman crawling out from under that stone today to say,
look how well I did.
Look, it's thanks to me.
I don't think so.
Bloody you've got to admire the chutzpah.
But I mean, to be positive about it, I think that what this does is it forces people of goodwill.
Yeah.
We must rise to the occasion on this, because we cannot let this just be another stick with which for Reform and Co can beat the system.
I'm clear. What we cannot afford to be is to talk about migration in isolation, because it is
100%.
It is it's a big part of, but it's a part of a jigsaw and all of the pieces need to be looked at together.
Hypermodern life is incredibly interconnected and incredibly complex.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we've arrived at a form of political discourse that is totally hostile to that message.
But it's weird, isn't it? Maybe it's because of the departmental system of government we have, and we have everything's very compartmentalized, and we talk about things in isolation. We
Yes.
talk about housing, we talk about education, we talk about migration, we talk about infrastructure, we talk about them all as though they barely had any connection to each other, but they're all so deeply connected.
You know, we talk about migration as if there was just a large group of people in France sort of coming it over just to come over. You know, no real reason, you know, whereas in fact they are, you know, the multiplicity of reasons is huge. And by the way, I mean, this is another sort of thing to anticipate. If there is a deal, as you said last week, if there is a deal in Ukraine, you can expect a lot more Ukrainians coming into continental Europe and here in the next year. So, you know, we can't, you know, the Faragist line is not sustainable, let alone morally defensible.
Okay. Thank you for listening to that. We're going to come back in a couple of minutes after a few brief messages, and we're going to talk about our annual shit list.
And glorious it is too.
Yeah. See you in a minute. So Matt, it's my welcome back everybody. It's my one of my favourite editions of the year this year.
And rightly so.
It's the second annual New European Shit List.
It's a great moment.
50 people the UK could definitely do without. And we published it this week. And
honestly, folks, go and buy a copy if you're not subscribed, because it's a keep and collect thing. It really is.
I mean, what I wanted to do is to do it as an actual awards ceremony.
Yeah.
And invite all the winners.
Yeah.
Of course, on the basis that none of them would turn up. But I think I might be wrong about that, because the reaction to this is always takes me by surprise, which is that there's a combination of people like Lawrence Fox, for instance.
Yes.
And look, I am no friend of Lawrence Fox.
No,
but if I was on the shit list, this is how I would deal with it, which is how Lawrence Fox dealt with it, which is say, thank you so much. I'm going to frame that and put it on my toilet.
That's the right response, right?
And then you get people like our friend of the show, the brilliantly reliable Owen Jones.
So, well, before we get to Owen, because I think he deserves full exploration. Sorry, that came out wrong. You posted to the work group WhatsApp a wonderful clip from GB News on Wednesday night, which was the Ben Leo, the host, clutching his pearls and saying, oh, it's hyper woke, hyper liberal and hyper hateful. Well,
it was a full 6 minute.
I mean, first of all, what's wrong with that, right? You know, that sounds like a pretty good triptych to me, right? And then he described it, and I thought it was brilliant, sort of, you know, right-wing nonsense. The vile naughty list, right? And then he went to, Darren Grimes, who I can't remember where he
Darren was on it,
where he figures.
Let me get it open, because we should mention some
we should mention some of the names,
who aren't on it. Justin Welby was on it. Let's Neil Oliver, Darren
Justin Welby, new entry this year.
Tell you what, why don't I just skip through at 50? So this is in reverse order.
Yeah.
At 50, Jacob Rees-Mogg,
obviously.
Then Julia Hartley-Brewer.
Who was sad last year not to be included.
So Julia Hartley-Brewer last year moaned like hell that she wasn't in it. This year we put it in and she moaned like hell that she was in it.
But
she got very grumpy. But I suspect that's because her radio figures are down 15%. Okay. So anyway, so she's in a bad mood. Peter Hitchens, Suella Braverman, Prince Andrew, Natch, Ben Habib, Michael Ashcroft, Mike Graham, Rishi Sunak.
Can I just say, I'm really pleased Rishi Sunak in that, because, as you know, one of my fears when the last government was called on 2 doctors and a judge to preside over its assisted dying, right? One of my worries was that Sunak would kind of be turned into a national treasure, right?
Yes.
With his fucking Bluetooth mod. And I'm really pleased that he's still in there.
Yeah.
He was the man. He was stop the boats man, right? Never to be forgiven.
Dan Wootton. David Coote, who is the referee who called Jurgen Klopp a twat.
Yes.
Well, don't mess with Jurgen Klopp.
Don't mess with not on
Matt
your
Goodwin,
watch.
Quentin Letts, Carol Malone, and then I don't think we could be asked finding out their real names. We just put the bloke from Right Said Fred.
That is there. I'm sure that's on their birth certificate. Yeah.
Rupert Lowe. Who else have we got? Neil Oliver, the Coast guy.
Again, I'd like to intercede. Say again, I was thrilled. He's one of my favourites. I call whenever I post on him on X, I call him the Lindisfarne roadie, and because he wears his appalling neckerchief.
You do a good impression.
Well, I don't see why we should all be subject to the pandemic, as our fundamental liberties are taken away by vaccines and 5G. Right? He is not a man with a deep sense of humour.
No, he's not. Well, that, by the way, you could say about most of the people on this list.
Pretty much. Yeah,
it's weird actually. There is a theme. And with a few anomalies, but most of them have got no sense of humour. The biggest culprit of that we will come to shortly.
Oh, yeah.
Victoria Atkins, Alex Phillips, Darren Grimes, Michelle Mone.
What number was Darren Grimes?
Darren was 31.
You need to up your game next year, Darren.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to up your game.
Michelle Mone, Douglas Murray, Joey Barton, Dominic Cummings, Lawrence Fox, David Frost, James Dyson. I was very keen. He should have been higher, 24. He should have been much higher.
Well, there's more,
David Black, Hugh Edwards, Alistair Heath, the Sunday Telegraph
Cassandra,
editor, and great,
Sane and Rational,
great columnist. Katie Hopkins hanging on in there. Katie was too high, I think. She's not as relevant as 20. But anyway, you can argue a toss. Morrissey at 19. Then friend of the show, Owen Jones. We'll come back to him in a second. Richard Tice, Boris Johnson, Frank Hester. And now we're into the top 14. In at 14, folks, it's Justin Welby.
Justin Welby, new entrant. Justin Welby with a bullet, we should say.
Paul Marshall, Isabel Oakeshott. Isabel worked so hard for that place.
She really did. Well done, Isabel. You've had a great year.
Excellent, Isabel.
Yeah.
Excellent shitting. Yeah. Alison Pearson. And then the top 10. Robert Jenrick. Robbie Gibb from the BBC. Kemi Badenoch. Jeremy Clarkson. Do you think a bit contentious? Because a lot of people love old Jezza, don't they?
Yeah,
because of his farming show.
One of the things with doing these lists is they're nothing if not contentious.
Yeah. Liz Truss. And then the top 5, Lee Anderson, Russell Brand.
Oh, now, can I just...
Please.
Russell Brand, right?
He won the Holy Shit of the Year award.
Which is the right one. Because obviously we can't talk about the things which are now legally being investigated. Yeah. But he would have made it anyway.
Yeah.
Because his new gig, which is to have discovered Jesus, right? And alone for his prancing around on stage with Tucker Carlson...
Yeah.
Ending one of their ridiculous conversations with a prayer to the Lord on his knees, right? Yes. That alone it earned him a top 10 place, right?
With Justin Welby.
This was a man who used to promise revolution, right? And he's now hanging out with Tucker Carlson and calling his audience, "You awakening beauties," right?
Oh, God.
Absolutely appalling.
Very good. And then the top 3.
The top 3.
Paula Vanells.
Massive.
Yeah.
Massive.
Tommy Robinson.
Always let's look. No one would deny Elvis his place in the pantheon. Tommy Robinson is the Elvis of shits, right?
But if Tommy is the Elvis, then how do you describe the king?
Well,
Nigel Farage topped the pile.
He's just the greatest.
He's the
goat,
emperor.
He's the goat of shits, right?
Yeah, the goat of shits.
The goat of shits. I mean, I challenge shits out there, right? And aspiring shits, because there'll be people aspiring to the list. A lot. That's be more Nigel, right? If you want to make it onto the Europeans shit list for 2025, right?
Yeah, he set a very high bar.
He is the king of the shits.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like the Muhammad Ali of shits.
It's his sewage plant, and we all just live in it.
That's right. Undefeated, undisputed, But
they said that about they said that about Mike Tyson, right?
They did.
So
there could be a Buster Douglas waiting in the wings.
Don't feel despondent. Yeah. Aspirant shits. You can make it. I believe in you.
I was looking out for, obviously. So we put it all out on X, Twitter. Yes. And some react well, some react badly. Yes. Some don't react at all, which is insouciance, which is always welcome. But the most reliable, predictable reaction comes from Owen Jones, of course, who today says, "I see I've made the shit list of the magazine of choice for very divorced dads." Can you be very divorced or just...
I suppose if you've been divorced more than once, which I have, you can...
You're very...
I mean, I'm not denying it.
He goes on. Its editor, he's talking about me, not the editor, but its editor has always been a big fan of mine. Here's how he responded when I went on Question Time in 2012 and opposed Israel's onslaught against Gaza and mentioned being violently mugged. Again, can you be non-violently mugged? I don't think. Anyway, I called him a gobshite. I said, this Owen Jones lad is dangerously mental. I wouldn't use the word mental these days.
No, times have changed.
Yeah. And then I said, I always thought the 84 in Owen Jones 84, that's his Twitter handle, was a reference to his birth year, not his IQ. Well, right. 12 years later, this still...
It still rankles.
It still rankles. And I'm sorry, Owen, these are views that I stand by to this day, I'm afraid.
Yeah. But... we were discussing this before, which is what's so fascinating about, and I don't want to sort of very bad people on both sides it too much, but what unites Darren Grimes and our friend Owen is that they are absolutely everywhere all at once, right? Everywhere all the time, all at once. Shouting the odds, calling people genocidal maniacs, or in Darren Grimes' case, traitors to their race or whatever. I don't know what.
To be fair to Darren Grimes, at least he is. There's a sense of some kind of humour and humanity.
A little bit.
Whereas Owen is just robotically nasty.
But the truth is that they can hand it out, but they cannot take it. They cannot take it. So I don't. My view on X is slightly. If people want to migrate to Bluesky, that's fine. Go where you want. Yeah. But I find X is a very useful resource for writing about what we write about. And I get called all sorts of stuff on it. I think it is different for women because that's a different matter because the things they get are violent and horrible. But if someone calls me an idiot, prat, or a fascist or a communist, it's all in a day's work, right? Yeah. But Owen really cannot take it, right? Which if you do what he does, which is establish a series of grifts based on the fact that certain sections of the population and nations are genocidal maniacs, and anyone who doesn't spend their Sundays marching about it is, by implication, a fifth columnist and genocidal maniac too. You're going to get a little bit of a response,
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think there's so much to admire about Owen Jones, but not so much for his output, but the business acumen is extraordinary.
He
is having a very good, profitable time of things.
Those who say British enterprise is dead do not know of what they speak.
Oh, no.
Because the plucky enterprise of the Owen Jones PLC brand, in its way, and people will say this is a stretch, but in its way, it's the Trump brand of the far left in the UK. There will be a Jones Tower one day, I'm sure.
The Guardian could certainly take some lessons from him in how to monetize strength of feeling. Because he I wonder how much he's making. If anyone has any idea,
well,
let us know.
The word around the street, and I'm sure Owen will correct us if this is wrong, is that he has millions in his bank account, right?
Really?
Yes. I mean, whether that's true or not, I don't know.
Good God.
But if he's, we will stand corrected if it's more or less, or who knows? It could be Elon Musk levels by now.
Very successful at getting money from people whose outrage he has provoked.
And he must be very proud as well because he went to America to tell people not to vote for Kamala Harris because she, surprise, surprise, was a genocidal maniac. Yeah. And she lost. Yeah. And so instead, the occupant of the White House on January 20th will be one of my favourite moderates, law-abiding, family man, Donald Trump.
Well done.
Who, if nothing else, has the goodwill, has the interests of the Palestinians close to his heart, right?
Oh Lord,
good work.
Well, anyway, so the shit list is on sale this week.
Yes,
and you can read it online actually, and you can read it for free. All you got to do is register. And then what we'll do is pester you ever more to subscribe. But you'll want to by then because it's such a great product.
You better.
Yeah. And like Owen Jones's revenues, ours are growing too. We've had a good year.
Yeah, we had a good year.
Have subscribed to us in numbers, and
but we haven't done it by peddling We haven't accused anyone, as far as I'm aware, of being a genocidal. Maybe we have. I don't think so.
No, I don't think we've accused people of being genocidal maniacs.
No.
But anyway, maybe we should. Maybe that's the way to go.
Maybe that's the Project 2025.
Yeah. Well, let us know what you think, folks.
Tell us who you think we should have included.
I'm quite sure Owen will let us know what he thinks.
I have a funny feeling he might,
Let's see if he can resist biting. Do you think?
Nah,
not a chance.
I doubt it, but we'll see.
I hope he does, because every time he does, our subscriptions go up. So,
come on, Owen, bring it.
He's a great recruitment officer for the New European.
Some would say a fifth columnist.
A
Manchurian candidate.
But honestly, for the record, we're not paying him.
No. We're one of the few people who don't actually pay him. That's right.
So send in your feedback, please, to 2mats@tnepublishing.com. That's the number 2, MATTS, at tnepublishing.com. Do subscribe to the New European, and you'll get that offer with Alistair Campbell's diaries.
Oh yeah,
another point of abuse for Owen Jones.
Yes.
I'm sure that won't be long coming. You actually employ actual war criminals.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah.
Anyway, you'll get that when you subscribe for free, and you go to www.theneweuropean.co.uk/2mats. Thanks as ever to our production team at Rethink Audio, led this week by Ollie Peart.
Thanks, Ollie.
And until
Monday?
Monday, indeed.
No, until Sunday.
Until Sunday. Q&A. Tune in
Q&A.
on Sunday for our Q&A. Have a great...
No, it's goodbye from me.
Oh, sorry. Yes, it is. It's goodbye from...
It's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from him.
Goodbye.